It's Morbin time.
No more.
Yes, that's my terrible John Hurt impression. You can see why Big Finish Productions don't return my calls to apply for the role of the War Doctor, and instead have gone for Jonathan Carley, who is now front and centre in a new War Doctor range for Big Finish Productions. Over the past few years, we've had the brilliant War Doctor Begins range, starting with Forged in Fire, and giving us some terrific releases like Battlegrounds, Fights with Monsters, Enemy Mine, and more, and now the range is undergoing a bit of an evolution along with the War Doctor as a character. We now have the War Doctor Rises, with the first release in this range being Morbius the Mighty. This is a story written by Tim Foley, who has just been on an absolute roll for the past couple of years, just back-to-back banger and banger and banger. Recently, we've had his brilliant Sontarans vs. Rutans installment, Children of the Future. We also had Birdsong in the 8th Doctor Adventures Echoes, and also my number one story of the year so far, Archipelago, in the 9th Doctor Adventures Starcrossed. But another release that he's been working on this year was the trilogy for Dark Gallifrey, the Morbius trilogy, which essentially told the story of Morbius trying to engineer his own resurrection at the hands of his cultish followers after he was defeated by Gallifreyans and the Sisterhood of Khan in a war in the Dark Times. That's right, Theo. And while you don't need that Dark Gallifrey prerequisite in order to enjoy Morbius the Mighty, this is pretty much a sequel to the events of Dark Gallifrey. Morbius was defeated by a hologram projection of the past and the future of the 4th Doctor when he was president of Gallifrey. It's a long story, but then he finds himself resurrected again millennia later in the middle of the Time War. We have a Time War veteran called Judd, played by Gareth Armstrong, who inadvertently resurrects Morbius and essentially becomes his snivelling second-in-command. And of course, Morbius is once again played here brilliantly by Samuel West. This new version of Morbius from Big Finish Productions, played by Samuel West, is essentially a charismatic cult leader who has a massive ego and an insane amount of vanity, and is able to persuade and manipulate people through, yes, sheer charisma, but also through some sort of hypnotism, which is why he's able to amass such devout followers, and he's going to use that new influence to essentially win the Time War.
Steady those heartbeats. It sounds as though they will burst out of your chest.
I'm no one. Not really. I'm not even part of the fight, not anymore. If that's why you're being...
The fight? What is that? Yes, think on that thought a moment longer. I can sense it in your mind. A kaleidoscope of catastrophe. A great battle in time. How history repeats itself.
Who are you?
If you are a Time Lord, you should worship me too.
Why?
Why? For I am the greatest of you. Whatever fight you now have, I fought it first. I gave that battle fire to my people. I paved the way. Light the torch, my child.
God's alive! Your face!
On your knees!
I'm sorry. Your skin!
On your knees and worship me! For I am the general, the true president, the rightful victor of your tiny world. Morbius.
But where is the War Doctor in the middle of this, played by Jonathan Carley? Well, he has been removed from battle for 3 years. He is undergoing treatment for temporal toxemia. An off-screen adventure resulted in him being poisoned by this toxin, which means that if he goes anywhere near fourth dimensional travel, whether it be the TARDIS or a time ring or anything, it will give him excruciating pain and may even kill him. So he's being treated by a member of the Sisterhood of Khan, Cora, played by Sheila Ruskin, who you can see on the cover here, and she also played Cassia in The Keeper of Traken, which is a nice fun classic series connection. Oh, and Gareth Armstrong, who plays Judd, he was also in The Mask of Mandragora, so once again they're finding these classic series actors and giving them a new lease on life here. It's really fun. The War Doctor has not finished his treatment. He's still very weak, he's still very crotchety. However, Morbius essentially puts a bounty on the Doctor's head. He broadcasts a universe-wide message saying, "Bring me the Doctor, I want revenge on this petty Time Lord, and I don't care if it's Daleks, Daleks or Time Lords or anybody else, if you give me the means to kill the Doctor, I will win the Time War for you, which is a brilliant curveball for Morbius to introduce in the Time War, and it's also a fun parallel which gives the War Doctor a great adversary in this story because Morbius has been resurrected again and he's essentially a walking, decomposing corpse. He has like fire and lightning powers like Emperor Palpatine style, but he is also a decaying, decrepit relic of the past, who's trying to force himself to live through sheer force of will, and he will not, cannot move on until he's got revenge on the Doctor.
I speak to all who fight, to the first Time Lord, Dalek, or other who brings me the Doctor alive. I will give you the means to win this war.
But keep him from me, and you will die.
Always nice to be talked about.
Do you recognize the voice?
I don't know. Perhaps there was something vaguely familiar about that bombast. But I'm hardly a popular figure at the best of times. Who was it?
We don't know either. The message was issued from the Dreadnought Intrepid, one of the Valley Guard.
The Dreadnought Intrepid? They tried to get me to helm a ship of that class once. Must be pretty old, mind, if they went to all the trouble of naming it. They barely roll out with serial numbers these days.
The great trend that we've had for Morbius Big Finish stories, and I say Morbius Big Finish stories, I mean Morbius the Mighty and also the Dark Gallifrey trilogy, is that they've really taken the idea that the brain of Morbius from season 13 of Doctor Who was based off of the public domain horror story Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. And what they've done here, or what Tim Foley has done here with Big Finish, is that they've continued to take inspiration from public domain horror stories and public domain fables. Dark Gallifrey was essentially the captain's log chapter of the Bram Stoker Dracula book, which is the chapter in the book where Dracula is being taken on the ship the Demeter and it eventually runs aground in Whitby, which was the inspiration for the recent The Last Voyage of the Demeter movie. And now Morbius the Mighty is taking inspiration from Herman Melville's Moby Dick, the 19th century story about Ishmael, who is obsessed with tracking down and killing this white whale. And Ishmael would do absolutely anything in order to fulfill his quest, and Morbius is the Ishmael here, and the white whale is the War Doctor. And there's some really effective set pieces in this story where Morbius has commandeered a Time Lord dreadnought ship and is using it to go from planet to planet and just killing everyone on board of it, just shooting it out of the sky in order to track down the Doctor, and also just because he wants to flex his power. He'll go to New Marinus, which is occupied by the Vord, who you may remember from the Keys of Marinus from the 1960s. Okay, scan for the Doctor. Okay, he's not on this planet. Shoot it down. And Judd and the other Time Lord disciples at his disposal are just too afraid to say no. And this quest of his brings the War Doctor out of a premature healing period and also brings out the Daleks, who are like, what the hell is this guy doing? and they just decide to investigate, and all of these paths converge into a really epic finale, which very cleverly also incorporates the 8th Doctor's TARDIS, and in particular the see-through ceiling which can show the stars above. You think that this cover from the brilliant artist Sean Longmore, you think that this cover is just, oh, it's a great backdrop, it shows the 8th Doctor's TARDIS, but no, this is like a key part of the climax of the story, a really epic finale, which is great symbolically, but is just a really terrific set piece. Jonathan Carley and Samuel West are absolutely terrific, and yes, it is a big, epic, expansive Time War story, but what really excels in this story are the really small and intimate character beats, particularly between the War Doctor and also Cora, where Cora is one of the last of the Sisterhood of Khan and is the long-suffering nurse to this really difficult patient. And the War Doctor Rises title for this new range at Big Finish is not just a rebranding exercise. You can see a very clear pivot in the Doctor's personality from the War Doctor in the War Doctor Begins range, leading up to the Doctor who we see in the Day of the Doctor 50th Anniversary Special, and also the John Hurt Big Finish audios from several years ago before he passed away. Morbius is a really interesting villain, a effective mirror to this version of the Doctor, where you can see why he would cross those invisible moral lines. And I think my favourite scene in in Morbius the Mighty is when the Doctor confesses to Cora as to why he didn't regenerate when he got to the temporal toxemia, because he could have done that to flush it out of his system, but this is a self-flagellating, self-loathing warrior Doctor, and I think Jonathan Carley really sold that moment. If you've not listened to these sets, I think it's easy to think that Jonathan Carley is just doing an impression of the late great John Hurt, but no, this is a fully fledged performance. This is a Doctor who has been undergoing many complex arcs over the, God, how many box sets? Yeah, 6 box sets in the War Doctor Begins range, and that's not even counting all of the other small appearances he's done across other stories like Once and Future, like Family Ties, like Sontarans vs. Rutans, etc. I'm not saying that John Hurt as the War Doctor was not his own distinct personality before, but this is why this is one of my favourite ranges from Big Finish, because they are taking this kind of offshoot Doctor who we didn't get to spend a lot of time with on TV and really fleshing him out into his own full-blown legitimate incarnation with his own wants and desires and arc and interpersonal relationships between his villains like Morbius and also his allies like Case in the War Doctor Begins range, who is probably the closest he's ever going to get to an actual conventional Doctor companion relationship, and how that story ended, tragically so because it's the War Doctor, was really, really effective and one of my favourite recent Big Finish story arcs. And I think what happens with the 8th Doctor's TARDIS is just another extension on the last box set, Enemy Mine, where the 8th Doctor and the War Doctor communicate with each other through audio channels. So the 8th Doctor never really discovers who this gravelly voiced stranger is on the intercom, but the Morbius the Mighty finale makes literal the disconnecting of his previous selves. Oh yeah, and one thing I forgot to mention, Morbius the Mighty is an epic long 3-part story. This isn't made up of like 3 segmented parts. This is essentially an epic war film. It is Moby Dick in the Time War. It is a continuation of the War Doctor's character arc from the past few box sets, with some really strong, eventful and impactful action sequences and some really terrific performances. Jonathan Carley, Samuel West, Sheila Ruskin, really strong cast overall. I also think there's some interesting world building here where you have these like Dalek and Time Lord hybrids. They're basically like Time Lords who have been turned into Robo-Men, and I have a feeling that's a concept that might be developed further in future War Doctor or Time War ranges. Like I said, I don't think you need to have listened to Dark Gallifrey to enjoy or invest in Morbius the Mighty, but Morbius the Mighty does have a couple of references back to it, so if you need to be completely 100% on board, this trilogy is what you need to listen to. Honestly, I have very few complaints with Morbius the Mighty. It was a really strong, a characteristically strong Tim Foley and Time War release that, due to its lengthy 3-part, 3-hour format, means that it's able to flesh out all of these character beats and also deliver on the big Time War scale that we expect from these stories. My only caveat with recommending Morbius the Mighty is that maybe don't start with this as your first War Doctor release. There are some absolutely brilliant War Doctor releases that Big Finish have been releasing over the past 10 years, so, you know, I think that they might be better introductory points, but if you've been invested and listening to the War Doctor range over the past few years, then you can be safe in the knowledge that Morbius the Mighty is just another banger, another really strong release. So that was my review of Doctor Who The War Doctor Rises, Morbius the Mighty. Let me know if you've listened to it down below. Let me know what your favourite War Doctor release is in the comment section below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that like button because it really helps me out. And folks, I'll see you all next time. Do you like the Dalek, Theo? Exterminate. Exterminate. Do not sniff. Do not sniff. Daleks are victorious again. The enemy flees. The enemy flees.